You are now listening to the Low Hanging Fruits podcast. Listener discretion is advised.
Chop, chop, chop.
Hello, everyone. This is the Low Hanging Fruits podcast. I'm your co-host, Lauren.
I'm Constance.
I am Kelsey.
And I'm Elyssa.
And today we're following up on an earlier episode where we talked about YouTuber extraordinaire Peter Coffin and some of their commentaries.
Yeah.
Today, we decided that it would be funny to read their book. And I've got a special surprise in store for you all, but I'd like to move in reverse order, sort of counterintuitively to build suspense.
Oh my.
And I'd like to just leave a note here that in general, I find the text to be a bit less objectionable the further it goes on. So the last real note that I had here of something funny, and I'd like to kick this off because this is very much the tone of the book, is this is the first edition, page 148. Elyssa checked the second edition, and most of
Right.
this appears to be canon. But
That's because there are two
this
editions,
says,
and it seems that
this says 148. So what are consumer protections? I'll quote Wikipedia because the volunteers there put it very plainly. Consumer protection is a group of laws and organizations designed to ensure the rights of consumers, as well as fair trade, competition, and accurate information in the marketplace. And the reason why I bring that up, that Coffin quotes Wikipedia in that chapter, is that that's kind of the level of citation that we're working with. A little, stick that in your memory, and we'll come back to that later. Just mentioning that they got something somewhere and then going on to just sort of be like, yeah, so that's basically how I know about this is I just read it. And I don't have to include citations, which to me is how some people write, but I don't like it very much at all. I don't approve.
Well, you'd think if you were going to make a book that you would at least, maybe go in the footnotes of the Wikipedia article and actually go look at the source material, maybe. At least, pretend, At least there's some
Yeah.
level of honesty there that's laid bare.
Well, I'd like to note that some of these, a lot of these thinkers who get published don't do that, and I think that it's a real shame to not cite your sources formally, so people can actually go and check whether you're lying or being honest, and that's pretty important. Like, I was reading Zizek recently, we'll come back to that, and who does not by name come up in this book, but
Really?
he doesn't do either. Yeah, I know, big surprise. Coffin is very familiar with Zizek.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if it's like if it's kind of like seen as like by its target demographic as like if you cite all these thinkers that you're kind of like showing off. I wonder what the rationale behind that is, because like at least pretending doesn't seem like that much effort.
It's well, Coffin mentions multiple times that what they're actually doing is they're citing or just mentioning. They don't say the word citing, to my recollection.
Like,
They're
for example,
saying things that other people have said, but they say at least twice in the book that they're just coming to their own conclusions, which I think is very telling.
well, I just looked up. Peter cites De Boer 15 times total. Well, not citing, but mentions 15 times the whole book.
Yeah, name drops.
Yeah, name drops.
And in the interest of transparency, I went and I read Society of the Spectacle in preparation for this as well, so I had to read 3 different books.
Chomsky 3
and-
times.
One thing that stuck out to me is that I don't think Peter's representation of De Boer is inaccurate in most ways, but to my recollection, or Dubois or whatever, I don't.
De Boer.
Guy Dubois, I think is
Guy
the
Debord.
yeah, Guy Dubois, whatever. I can't say it. I have a dumb weirdo white American mouth. So Dubois makes a comment towards the end of the text about sort of people who ostensibly agree with his position or the position that he's just laid out, but who are seemingly very interested in kind of pursuing like the discourse of ideas and not so much of like a material reality.
Oh.
And this is something that Peter kind of brings up as well. But Peter's way of processing the whole like social capital thing is very interesting to me. So this is much earlier from page 77. In neoliberalism, profit, both monetary and social, can be derived by saying what people want to hear. Social interaction and discourse are commodities. So how do we exchange them? Well, that would be the marketplace of ideas, a notion that is touted as the means of facilitating the adoption of concepts through a metaphorical free market. Through this symbolic belief bazaar, it's proposed that the truth will, by default, emerge from the competition of ideas in public discourse. And this to me is a little interesting because it's sort of, it feels like taking this like analogy of identity and of social interaction and as commodity, and then kind of trying to apply the logic that Marx uses for commodities to them, as if they should simply follow along all of the same lines. And Du Bois definitely has like a kind of Marxist lens when writing. There's a lot of like intra-leftist discourse in that book that I think people would find interesting if they read it. But this is interesting because this whole social interaction and discourse are commodities thing is something that Coffin brings up a lot relative to social media. And obviously that's true, but they seem to apply it very much to like the monetization of social media. And it's worth pointing out that like this is sort of a thing that occurs on two levels, and Coffin doesn't appear to distinguish in their book what level it's occurring on or between the two, because social media, as far as information goes and as far as discourse, social media's monetization policy is through data collection and then selling data. That's how they make the majority of their money. So that's sort of a literal commodification of those things. But like Du Bois is operating on a much more general, not so much figurative, but almost metaphorical level. And I think that if you're doing that, then you're kind of mixing metaphors, I suppose.
Well, I think I know I remember some discourse on Twitter where like quote unquote radical feminists were basically like using like Marxian like points about commodities to like argue certain points, and then when you look like it's like the same dynamic where you're just like kind of like using what Marx's discussion about like commodities and exchange and the market, but then you're kind of you almost have to decontextualize what is meant like there, and you just apply it to like things that really like, I mean, they could be made to fit, but instead it's just sort of made into like Marx's points are made into a metaphor, and then you just go from there into like cultural stuff.
Yeah, it's
because like I want to know what the use value of tweets are. I want to know.
Yeah. In fact, I think you might have seen. I recall screen capping somebody who was watching a sort of discussion and debate between two people about Marxist terminology, and he was like, "What's the use value of this discussion of the ideas that you're exchanging?" And I was like, "Shut the fuck up! You've never read Marx. Shut the fuck up." And there's two other claims much earlier on.
It seems like what a lot of people mean by commodity is like they're conflating the Marxian what Marx means by a commodity they're conflating it with like a more shall we say colloquial definition, because like what people like want to use like commodity as like a cultural like in a cultural analysis, you don't hear them talk about like the use value and then the value, and then like when how like the body of the commodity is used as a necessary form of appearance of the exchange value, and like stuff like that. You don't hear that. And like
Yeah,
that's the base
that's
level
why
stuff.
the Du Bois is operating on kind of a metaphorical level and kind of elucidating the way that the society of the spectacle operates by using some of Marx's language. but very clearly has like critiques of like Trotskyists and people. Like he talks about it at length.
I mean, I'm pretty sure he calls, like, if I remember, there's like a line in there. I haven't read a Sighted Spectacle, I should, but I know there's a line in there where he just calls Lenin a Kautskyist, basically. And I think he was pretty close to some council communist positions in some respects.
Yeah, I'd have to revisit it yet again to quote him precisely, but he's very critical of Lenin. He's very critical of anarchists, just kind of like leftists as a whole. It's got kind of like a vaguely post-left vibe to it. Actually, it's kind of funny.
Which might be why Peter liked it so much, and kind
I know
of
possibly
prefigures.
I mean, I
his,
kind of liked it for
their
that reason.
huh?
For that reason, I kind of liked it for that reason.
Yeah.
But I want to read a couple things from an earlier chapter now, because you mentioned this earlier, and you guys can break on this. It's fantastic. So Peter says, and these are two passages I'm going to read back to back. Individualism is a social outlook that emphasizes the importance of the individual at the moral level, that it is moral for the individual to be the most important thing, also making the individual the highest moral authority. One's goals and desires are not just one's drive, but also one's value. The hyper-individualism of the United States of America considers independence and self-reliance to be godlike. The individual is believed to hold precedence over any group. The customer is always right. And then just later on, this is about 20 pages later, of the utmost importance to an individualist is opposing interference with the interests of the individual from society or institution, public or private. This is often to such a degree that any kind of collective is characterized as totalitarian, either loosely or to the point that they are synonymous. Ayn Rand's philosophy of objectivism really doesn't read that differently from the ego and his own. The focus is in different places, but I have sincere doubt Stirner would dislike the virtue of selfishness, a new concept of egoism.
Oh my God. I you see the other like quotes about Stirner that I posted, because like it's so like I think like even like most of the people who like really dislike like Stirner and whatever, they wouldn't talk about Stirner this way, because like, yeah, wait, I'll quote it. I have it here. But I cannot resist. If he weren't a Reddit incel, I think Stirner would have at least been some 4chan dipshit had he lived in this era, complete with ironic racism. To me, he comes off as a selfish man-child who happened to have some decent ideas about some things while endlessly shouting that he should be doing as he pleases always. This is the area of his work that I think today's individualism at least partially draws from. Like,
That's a self-portrait, by the way. I'm just gonna say it. Self-portrait of Peter.
like I think there are probably some intelligent critiques to be made of Stirner, right? I'm not very familiar with Stirner,
Read
but
German
like
ideology. There's a whole section, Saint Max.
it's probably possible to have like an intelligent critique of him, but like I don't think calling him a Reddit incel and a 4chan dipshit is quite it.
It's certainly
Like,
not substantive.
yeah, no.
That's just kind of accusation slinging. I mean, there's not much excerpts from Stirner's work here to really.
Are there excerpts?
Defend that on.
Are there excerpts at all?
Well, I think he very vaguely quotes him or paraphrases him, but it's not. It's the kind of situation where if you're going to make a claim that bold, what would you want? You'd want citations. You'd want a way to present information that doesn't make it apparent that you're just talking out your ass. And this comes up again because there's another different topical instance of this happening. Peter says religion evolves with society, and the biggest piece of evidence I'd submit in support is the Old Testament. The Old Testament pretty much tells us to stone everything that isn't a nuclear family, although we didn't start using that term at a societal level until the 1950s. If they're not behaving in a manner that creates more human beings while following the established hierarchy, you stone them. And this they sort of later go on to just be like, yeah, religion has changed, and we don't like stone gay people anymore, which is interesting. And then there's another thing in here where I like they go on to say on the next page, the genuinely religious among us, thankfully, are less dogmatic than they once were. I don't understand why people criticize Christians for picking and choosing. When I see someone do it, I can't help but think to myself that it's a good thing the stoning stopped at some point. Does that person really just want to be able to do rock murders? So this is just completely fucking impenetrable to me, because the idea that religion has changed, but that also like the nuclear family is something you can trace to its roots in a like Hebrew texts is just fucking baffling to me. To an era where men would have like multiple wives or things like that. And a fundamental to the nuclear family is its other norms, not just heterosexuality. I mean, that's one thing, but it's really engaging in a kind of presentism, projecting the present onto the
I
past
mean,
as if it's kind of always been like that. But it also runs counter to their point that religion changes, because that's what, 1,000, 2,000 years of stagnation. Come on.
I mean they're not even like pinning it like nuclear family on like a certain arrangement of like capital and like Fordism and kind of like the Second World War and like the whole boom where like America is kind of gets a kind of a big boost out of the fact like the whole world is basically ruined and like they're kind of the only big dog left standing. Like the Russians are fucking decimated. Europe is like a fucking complete like wasteland and they're the ones.
It's what's intriguing is that this comes up early in the chapter, the religion of me. And this is sort of one of the terms that Coffin kind of invents to
Wait,
describe something that somebody else has written about.
what term?
The religion of me
Oh,
is what they call it. Um, so, and there's a phrase there that we can come back to later. They say religion is a collective reality in the way I'm using the term. This prompts the question, why hasn't that been enough? This book has repeatedly said that a collective reality is what we should strive for and will continue to do so. Um, and then this idea that like religion is a collective reality, which is fucking weird to me, because like Christianity alone has a million splinter cells. And this later comment that the genuinely religious among us are thankfully less dogmatic than they once were. I'm not seeing that at all. Are you fucking kidding me? Have you met an evangelical? Like, what the
But
fuck are you talking about? Are they not genuinely religious? By what standard?
yeah, I kind of wonder what they mean by like genuinely religious there, because is it like, do they think like evangelicals don't really believe what they like say they believe, but they're just like using Christianity to like justify like their their already reactionary beliefs, or like, and that like the genuinely religious just follow like the books wherever it leads them or whatever. Because like I feel like a lot of reactionary Christians also kind of have an attitude of I just follow the book wherever it leads me. So like I'm curious what they mean by like genuinely religious there.
Yeah, so the interesting thing, and they sort of talk about like the idea that they don't care about like picking and choosing. I think genuinely religious there is kind of a cop-out term, because if confronted about that, they would probably say, well, you can come up with people who are dogmatic, but I don't think they're genuinely religious. But evangelicals are a religious cult. They're insanely religious. So I don't think that really comes into play. But the interesting thing about a group like that is one thing that you may not have heard evangelicals say, but that I can report that they say quite frequently. If you bring up what Coffin is talking about to them, if you talk about how they're picking and choosing verses from the Bible, they say, we're not going to let you use our faith against us. Which is to say that, like, Coffin presents it like this kind of vaguely self-aware thing, that it's good that they're picking and choosing. Um, and the fact that it's good that they're picking and choosing is something that evangelicals do to justify the whole stoning gay people mentality. I mean, they're not literally out in the streets stoning gay people, but you can very easily imagine what the country would be like if they could. And this is just baffling to me. That's something that I found only reading this for the second time. But it is, I mean,
because like
God.
for the listeners, Lauren got us a birthday gift, if I remember correctly, among other things.
I think Peter offered to buy me the second edition as a birthday gift. Not as a birthday gift. It was when Ashley bought me an Xbox controller so that I could start streaming again, which I was very grateful for.
Yeah, she told me about that actually. She very much liked you. Always spoke highly of you.
I think she's great. I haven't had the chance to talk to her lately, but I hope that she's all right. And I just it's we're coming to the last main objection, and this is one that I've been keeping under my hat, but Peter offered to buy me the second edition for the book. I believe I actually bought this one myself out of interest. I think. I'm not sure. That's what I think. But yeah, no. This was I'm gonna read now about 4 passages back to back, and it's gonna be a bit long.
Is this
but then I'm gonna hit you guys.
Big reveal?
I'm gonna hit you guys with a huge. Yeah, this is the big reveal. I'm gonna hit you guys with a huge shell. All right.
I'm clapping my hands right now. Let's go, Lauren.
From page 2 to 3, Peter says, "If 9/11 hadn't happened while I was in art class, that would be all there is to my memory of it. To be clear, the first plane hit about 15 minutes before second period art. They had a TV set up before 9 a.m. though when class started. Upon walking in a minute or two before class started, I didn't understand what was on the screen. By 9:03 a.m., more students were in the classroom than they were supposed to be. They'd been filling in because it was one of the only classrooms with a television, and it was very clear something big was happening. The next 15 minutes of the broadcast were very intense. The channel we were watching had a close-up of the first tower burning when the second plane hit at 9:03. So we actually didn't see it live, but the anchors were narrating the scene. One kind of trailed off, and the other let out an "oh my god." After a moment of regaining composure, they noted there was what appeared to be another plane hitting the second tower. Another 15 minutes passed, and it was 2003. We all aged about 2 years in that 15 minutes, and I was no longer in art class. Again, kind of mixing, like, aging 2 years in 15 minutes, but 15 minutes passing into 2003. I think that's getting a little too cute with the language. I was starting a program at the local community college that would last just a bit less than 12 minutes before I dropped out. Another war in Iraq was underway, and health savings accounts were the hip new thing. Everything was totally normal for sure. Not so much. To many of us, reality was changing. Stick that in your brain. Fracturing further beyond the borders of its latest traumatic wound. Personally, that fracture led me to heavily question my role as someone shortly entering adulthood in America. What was the American dream? Why do these people hate us? We're just normal people living our lives. What did we do to them? It made no sense to me, and for good reason. I didn't understand reality. I wasn't the only one. From the liberals torn between capital and their own morals to the conspiracy theorists, reality was behaving like a cracked windshield that you don't get replaced because you can definitely still see. In any case, it's 2018 and we're still taking the side roads to avoid getting a fine. This doesn't work forever, though. We've gotten one before. I mean, it kind of does, though. That's a weird analogy to make because I've been taking the side roads like forever in my town for my entire life, and I don't think that it's going to stop being an option. That's a weird thing to say. I don't know why. Yeah. So this particular windshield was mostly intact for several generations, though we were beginning to think that would be the one that protected the inside of our car from the friction of moving air forever. 9/11 changed each of our individual realities in different ways and cemented the Middle East as an ongoing topic of discussion for reasons. I can say that I'm a millennial. I want to quickly summarize a principle that has, mostly outside the view of our everyday lives, driven a large fraction of the sweeping changes in the 20th century. If you have oil, we will come and democratize your ass with some serious freedom. That's military reality. And this is the second passage. This is now on page 7. The manipulation of reality didn't start with the World Trade Centers falling. It also didn't start with the algorithms or social networks. These things enabled it on pretty high levels over the last decade. But reality has been on this trajectory for centuries. We could have spent a long time in this intro setting up historical context to give you a fuller view. But from this point, I'll reserve further contextualization for people when talking specific mechanics. Excuse me, I just lost my page. Or situations. Please remember that my concepts, fucking look at that, my concepts, think about that, of how this works are based mostly on observation. I'm attempting to create and apply framing devices that can both explain and aid in further criticism and observation of the reality crisis this world is currently having. I also want to remind you that this isn't new. Prophet was always nudging people in this direction. And then this is from pages 23 to 24. What prompts the most postmodern question of all time? Which prompts the postmodern question? What is reality? There are wealthy, prominent figures in one of the United States' biggest industries, technology, who believe the answer is that we live in a computer simulation. And who knows, they could be right. Simulation theory posits that reality is running on one or more computers. This requires many assumptions. There must be computers, and they must be powerful enough to run all of the physical simulations and render an image for every single person who is connected to or created by the simulation. If each one of our consciousnesses are generated by the simulation, then we would all be smaller scale simulations ourselves as well. We all make complex observations and choices on a nonstop basis. Are we hardware? Are we software emulation? Are we interfacing with the simulation, or are we part of it? These are all questions that must be answered in order to map out even the simplest view, even the simplest version of this theory that could be considered complete. And then later on, this is the last one that I'd like to read to you. And this goes into chapter 3 on page 33. If there was an alternate world in which you were all powerful, where everything bent to your will, including your reality itself, would you want to live there? What would you give up to take residence? What if, technically speaking, it wasn't real? To you, it's real, but to nobody else. Is the real world, the one inhabited by others, real? Also, what is real? To quote the Matrix, because come on, you knew I would eventually, if real is what you can feel, smell, taste, and see, then real is simply electrical signals be interpreted by your brain. So, what if the world everyone else is living in is fake? What if the imaginary world we just made up, but also the real world, are fake? And if that sounds just wild and out there and just schizophrenic, I'm going to now read to you guys a passage from Zizek. And this is from an essay that Zizek wrote that was later published in a book called Passions of the Real, Passions of Semblance. I'm going to read this to you guys. And there's a whole essay that reads this way, and it's actually quite good. But there's definitely, like, hang on, let me see if I can find the, gotta fucking find the exact passage. Yes, okay, so I'm gonna read you guys, actually, I think I can read you two. So this one is page 12, 13. I think there's only one edition of this book. What happens at the end of this process of virtualization, however, is that we begin to experience real reality itself as a virtual entity. For the great majority of the public, the World Trade Center explosions were events on the TV screen. And when we watch the oft-repeated shot of frightened people running towards the camera ahead of the giant cloud of dust from the collapsing tower, was not the framing of the shot itself reminiscent of spectacular shots in catastrophe movies, a special effect which outdid all others since, as Jeremy Bentham knew, reality is the best appearance of itself? And was not the attack on the World Trade Center with regard to Hollywood catastrophe movies like snuff pornography versus ordinary sadomasochistic porno movies? Zizek is such a weird motherfucker. This is the element of truth in Karl-Heinz Stockhausen's provocative statement that the planes hitting the World Trade Center towers was the ultimate work of art. We can perceive the collapse of the World Trade Center towers as the climactic conclusion of 20th century art's passion for the real. The terrorists themselves did not do it primarily to provoke real material damage, but for the spectacular effect of it. When, days after September 11, 2001, our gaze was transfixed by the images of the plane hitting one of the World Trade Center towers, we were all forced to experience what the compulsion to repeat and jouissance beyond, I think that's how you say it, beyond the pleasure principle are. We wanted to see it again and again. The same shots were spread or were repeated ad nauseum. And the uncanny satisfaction we got from it was jouissance at its finest, at its purest. I'm stumbling over my words, I apologize. It was when we watched the two World Trade Center towers collapsing on the TV screen that it became possible to experience the falsity of reality TV shows. Even if these shows are for real, people still act in them. They simply play themselves. The standard disclaimer in a novel, characters in this text are fictional, any resemblance to real life characters is purely accidental, also holds for participants in reality soaps. What we see there are fictional characters, even if they play themselves for real. And now I'd like to move on to something else here. And this is just like I have to read one more paragraph. So this is from page 19.
From page 19
we should therefore
of what?
invert. Say again.
From what? Page 19 of what?
This is well, hang on. I'm going to say the name of the book. But this is from Zizek. Yes, from Passions of the Real Soul. Passions of Semblance is the name of this particular essay.
Okay, I want to make it clear.
It's the first chapter of the book.
Okay.
We should therefore invert the standard reading according to which the World Trade Center explosions were the intrusion of the real which shattered our illusory sphere. Quite the reverse. It was before the World Trade Center collapse that we lived in our reality, perceiving the third world horrors as something which was not actually part of our social reality, as something which existed for us as a spectral apparition on the TV screen. And what happened on September 11th was that this phantasmic screen apparition entered our reality. Phantasmatic. I can't even fucking say that word. It is not the reality. It is not that reality entered our image. The image entered and shattered our reality. Shattered. Same word there. I.e., the symbolic coordinates which determine what we experience as reality. The fact that after September 11th, the openings of many blockbuster movies with scenes which bear a resemblance to the World Trade Center collapse, tall buildings on fire under attack, terrorist attacks, were postponed, including Lilo and Stitch, by the way. That's my own note. Lilo and Stitch originally had like a plane chase scene through a city that looked like the World Trade Center attack. It was really funny. Or the films were even shelved, should thus be read as the repression of the phantasmatic background responsible for the impact of the World Trade Center collapse. Of course, the point is not to play a pseudo-postmodern game, there's postmodern coming up there, of reducing the World Trade Center collapse to just another media spectacle, reading it as catastrophic version of the snuff porno movies. The question we should have asked ourselves as we stared at the TV screens on September 11th is simply, where have we already seen the exact same thing over and over again? The name of this book is Welcome to the Desert of the Real, a line from The Matrix, which Coffin references to say a poorer version of all the same things. Is this plagiarism?
Oh my.
It's also notable to me that like Zizek cites a lot of people and like Coffin doesn't. So like you can kind of
Zizek formally doesn't cite people, but he does informally bring up concepts that he attributes to people, and he does give examples as opposed to just like metaphors. Coffin presents these ideas as Coffin's ideas. Zizek's book was published in 2002, Coffin's in 2008. I leave you to come to your own conclusions as to what this implies.
Oh my.
I cannot legally, in good standing, level an allegation of plagiarism at Peter, but I read Peter's book before I read Welcome to the Desert of the Real, which again, Zizek cites The Matrix in there to talk about the semblance of reality being shattered in a postmodern sense, all the same things Peter says. Now, Peter makes a sort of different contextual point about it with respect to trying to take this for his for their whole collective reality shtick, whereas for Zizek, it's his commentary on like disaster films, the whole semblance of the real versus the real kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that Peter knows everything Zizek. Peter's a huge Zizek fan. Zizek does not come up once by name in this book. And yet this idea that he came up with is being restated multiple times in part by Peter.
Yeah, that's interesting because he brings up the board, but would you say that Peter's presentation is more akin to Zizek than the board? Or is it like a Zizekian like read on the board? Because that's
Peter's kind of mixing both. I mean, Peter's passage doesn't just read like plagiarism to me. What it reads like is somebody who had an idea in their head and then heard, maybe heard Zizek like do a talk or something, and decided to bring this up like in a book to make a point that Peter personally published, probably preferring print publication for polemical pablum and possible plagiarism. Say that 5 times fast.
They also self-published, I think.
Yes.
Someone.
Yes,
It
they
was
did.
self-published. So, and I theorized on that their proofreader had to probably be their wife at the time, which would make sense because Ashley was actually kind of a speed reader, from what I know.
I believe they said that. And I've had people that I know proofread my books and stuff. It's it's a pretty common practice. I certainly wouldn't.
Oh, it's something I just found out reading the acknowledgments. Philosophy Tube gave notes on that book, but the thing is,
that makes too much fucking sense, dude.
They hate each other, and I know this for a fact because I heard some gossip from you know who. So what the hell happened there? So Philosophy Tube went from giving advice, like notes on like Peter's book, to making it like a catty like a jab at them in a YouTube video, and what the, I don't know what's fucking going on there.
Yeah, I mean Peter is the non-binary, gender-neutral emperor of burning bridges.
Yeah, Peter used to be pretty involved in like BreadTube, and like I think had a lot more.
They did a collaboration with ContraPoints too at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they had like a lot more connections back in the day. I remember, I think one of the first times I came across them was in like their debate with Destiny. Does anyone of you remember that?
I remember that.
I remember that.
Funnily enough, they were kind of right about Destiny in a really weird way.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure on the content there anymore.
No, me too. But
I do remember them calling themselves an anarcho-communist back then, which like.
And they just recently tweeted that they're basically a Marxist-Leninist now, right?
Yeah, but like I haven't seen them openly praise Stalin or whatever. But there's those screenshots I once posted where they did praise in their replies Stalin's understanding of dialectics.
Yeah, the dialectical and historical materialism. Yeah, that's like literally the textbooks where it's just like a catechism of yeah.
Yeah, I haven't ever seen them openly praise like Stalin and say like, oh, Stalin good. I think I've even seen them at one point say like, oh no, Stalin bad, Lenin good, right? But like maybe they kind of changed their perspective on that, and they're not quite comfortable saying Stalin good yet, or like I'm not sure.
Look, I'll just mention that the ex-wife is basically admitted to me that they were like leaning into being a Stalinist, so that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, it's not very public, I think, yet, but
it's not a very public thing. I mean, look, honestly, yeah.
This is sort of the reason why I support anti-YouTuber action, because
obviously
you could make a video about that.
It's just a hive mind. I am making a video about that 100%. But it's just this hive mind for just needless contrarianism and this penchant for just adopting the most insane positions because they make other people mad and because they're the opposite of what you're hearing, and that kind of makes it like seem amenable to you because that's all of that shit. That's all that shit is.
Yeah, it's I think there's YouTubers who kind of escape that, but like there's I think there's this kind of like particular brand of YouTuber that's like, I've said this before, but it's like they want to present themselves as like a person who is going to give you an intro to leftism. I'm going to like get you up to speed on the basics of leftism, and often it's like either it's just like some weird, very like some weird stuff like Hakim, like Stalinist nonsense, or it's just like very basic red lip kind of stuff. And like most of the people who do that don't really show that they've gone beyond the basics themselves. And I think Peter used to kind of do that back in the day, but now it's more like, yeah, now it's more like trying to sound deeper than they are. So like people are really blown away or whatever. I'm not sure.
It's, it's the kind of thing that just drives me fucking nuts because I have to sit here like some fucking asshole and say that I don't think that they're acting in bad faith and that they're a bad person and all the things that I usually say about YouTubers until I'm proven wrong. And I just these things are like just cesspits, these fucking websites. YouTube and Twitch are some of the worst. I mean, people talk about like places like DLive, which is obviously for like the people who can't who can't help but get kicked off YouTube. Um, Places like that obviously collect the worst of the worst people. But there's just something so fucked about all these platforms, and I really can't put it into words.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a general thing. I did see someone talk about that today and how they were like, I mean, there's some exceptions, right? Like Doe, I mean, of course, and I know a couple of other Twitch streamers who seem to like be pretty, I mean, fine, but there's like this general leftist sphere that they're all kind of like buddy with each other, and they on Twitch, and like they all go on each other's panels to debate each other, and it's all such garbage discourse, the constant rehash of the same points, and nobody ever. Yeah, it's I don't
It's
understand how it's not imploding immediately.
Some of you may recollect that for a while there was a kind of like resistance to like the left tubers like ContraPoints or like H Bomber Guy or Sean because they're not like socialist proper. They're just liberals basically. Even though they're part of RedTube supposedly. And the thing about that that's interesting to me is that they probably represent progressive views better than a lot of the alleged radicals of YouTube. It occurred to me the other day that like an H Bomber Guy video where he talks about like just I don't know some bullshit like climate change or something like that is infinitely more useful than some non-compete video where he just like farts out a bunch of random bullshit about how he thinks police would work in an anarchist society.
Yeah,
A classic.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. Wait,
And it's not that
I'm gonna
I don't
send
think
something.
stuff like that would be helpful, but he's just wrong about everything. Like, fuck me, dude.
I sent something in the chat because, like, I think this is an interesting part to talk about because, like, I think there's it's very easy to tell just by like the customers also bought items by tab, uh, like that the target demographic here is RedTube viewers, right? For Coffin's book, like it says
Yeah.
like Karl Marx, and I think Karl Marx is only there because he's like a big name, right? Like hard to get around him. And then Richard Wolff, Noam Chomsky, Naomi Klein, and Ben Burgess. And I feel like these are all kind of like the kind of people that RedTube viewers tend to be primarily drawn to, right? Like I wouldn't expect like a Malatesta or like Bordija or like yeah, and any of those kind of people. I wouldn't expect them to be on there. Like it's yeah, it's strange to me. Or like
If
even
yeah, it's well, I see. I'm amenable to people like Burgess because one minute they'll talk about something and it's like, okay, well, you misrepresenting Marx right now, and then using all of this pseudo language about like, oh well, we're just using different definitions or interpret, and it's like, no, but it's a wrong definition. Like you can't just pivot away to like, oh, my thing that I'm presenting as factual is actually it's just my opinion, and you can't be wrong because it's an opinion and it's just my interpretation and using different definitions. And it's like, well, okay, everything you say can be right if you're just using different definition. If that
yeah
justifies what you're doing, then who fucking cares? Then what you're doing is useless. Like I don't. Why should we care if you're just operating on these fucking weird ass definitions that aren't challenging people in the way that they need to be challenged? By the way, that's something that comes up all the time. It used to come up when I was in Peter's mentions about this stuff, which since they've blocked me, obviously doesn't happen anymore. But it happened. I actually got Burgess to reply to something that I wrote because I was trying to like pick his brain on it. I was like, why do this? Like, why talk about this way? Because like this is clearly not like an accurate reading of a Marxist concept, but you're sort of presenting it as if it is, and that's I think it's misleading. And I don't know, he just didn't really, he just sort of seemed to like brush it off. And I just felt like that was a little unfortunate because theoretically, if this shit's actually important, which, press X to doubt or whatever, but like if this shit's actually fucking important, wouldn't you want to be as accurate as possible and give people the most radical analysis as opposed to just saying stuff like, yeah, Marxism is when you think things are democratic? It's not it's not helpful.
yeah it's I I I don't like Ben Burgess at all. I think there's like a kind of discourse he follow and I, to, maybe this is a weird comparison, but like I'm sure you're all familiar with like Big Joe, right? Like
Hmm.
the
Yeah,
YouTuber.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think Ben Burgess and like many people in this kind of online uh, left sphere, right? Like they have a tendency to kind of like let themselves be very much guided by discourse. Like for example, I think Ben Burgess's latest book is like uh, canceling comedians while the world burns, right? Cancel culture
Mhm.
is like a discourse thing, and like yeah, I think that a lot of people have this, and to contrast it with, for instance, a Big Joe. Whenever I see one of his videos come, it's just clear that it's just like a random thing he got kind of fixated on, and he decides he wants to make a video about it. Like uh, one time it's like the ending of Avatar, or like uh, a Dr. Phil clip, or like it's it's completely detached from the discourse, and that's what I kind of appreciate about Big Joe, I guess, because well, I mean, I don't think he intends for it to be like major theoretical whatever, but like his content kind of stands on its own, whereas like yeah, these people within the online left sphere generally, I mean, Ben Burgess wrote a book entirely guided by online discourse. I think this, yeah, it's
I mean,
weird.
I remember them just like going like speculating about like the PMC and just oh my god. Wait, I should try to find it. I should try to find it.
That PMC bullshit is so pseudoscientific.
Yeah, it is.
Like
It is. It
it's
is.
funny to make
It's.
fun of journalists. Like I 100%, I'm anti-journalist action. 100%. Some of the worst people in it just imaginable. are journalists.
Oh,
and
wait,
just
okay,
are
wait,
legitimate.
I got. Oh wait! But I found the tweet where I mocked this shit, but he deleted it. The fucking coward! What the fuck?
I think he deleted all his tweets before a certain period of time because, like,
Oh,
he has only 379 now. So, like,
but it wasn't. It was like
Yeah.
it was insane. Like just like
Some
where
people have
somebody was just
the
like he was
algorithm.
trying to like so he's already like suiting out on the PMC stuff, and then it was like further suiting out by trying to like apply it to Twitter. It was like what are you on about? You just like you've you've overdosed on this shit.
Yeah, that's just fucking wild.
And like obviously it has to be like Ben has to be better than this in some respect if he's like thought like philosophy or something, but apparently not. Or maybe it's like that's what it's profitable to do. I mean, if it's just that, then okay, like okay, get it. You gotta get your fucking dough and
yeah,
No, I read for my YouTube channel. I fucking read. I mean, it's ironic I complain about YouTubers. I am one, but I read a sort of selection from Burgess. In fact, I think it was just an article that he published, and it was about like cancel culture and stuff like that. But it was about like public shaming and its function. And I thought that was really good. Like, it's odd because discourse is where Burgess is good usually. Like, it's it's weird to have a fixation on discourse. Like, that was how I used to be, and then I kind of realized, like, wow, that's just like an empty existence.
mm-hmm.
But it it is weird to have that fixation. But Ben's, like, social commentary, like cancel culture type stuff, is so much better than their stuff on like Marx or Theory. Like, it's just it's wild how different it is. So I'm sure that, like, if that's what they stick to in their book, then it'll be great. The title kind of sucks, though. Can I say that? The title kind of fucking
Yeah,
sucks.
but
Like, it's gonna
it's
mislead people.
it's 0 books. It's meant to like attract like it needs to be like just like they need to at least be able to sell a certain number of books. So like if you can get like even if the title's not accurate about what the content of the book is,
Well,
like
I understand, like, in terms of like clickbaiting or whatever, and maybe it is or maybe it isn't accurate. But my point was just that it's a stupid fucking thing to say, canceling comedians while the world burns, because that's how everybody always criticizes whatever thing they don't think people should be doing. Is like, oh, there's so many more important things to worry about, and it's like, well, that's non-criticism. Like, it's
mhm.
presumably it's a book full of real criticisms. So why would you? I don't know. That's just not a very good
having
title, and it's not really provocative either.
Yeah.
having breakfast while the world burns.
Right, yeah, that's I don't know, recording a podcast while the world burns. Everything that we're doing is, well, what are you talking about? Like, that's just a weird
Writing a
thing to
book about
I
cancel
don't
culture while the world burns.
Right, yeah, I understand it's kind of supposed to be provocative, but it's not really that I feel like it should be more provocative.
Yeah, I mean, it's this kind of reminds me of something another YouTuber I'm sure you're all familiar with. And I've talked about them with someone else recently. Radical Reviewer.
Oh no. Oh, I posted about them actually. Did you see that post where I was just like, is oh fuck, it was like there. Well, maybe I can find it. You can keep talking. I'll.
All right. So like Radical Reviewer, what kind of struck me about the channel is like that it's mostly just reviewing books that are kind of like in the kind of I think people will call it like often like the meme books, right? Like
Hmm.
it is the books that are like well known to like the online audience, but like I mean, for example, he he uh, he even to remain topical reviewed Peter Coffin's book, and I mean, if I look right now, I don't think I could find anything by like Bordilla or by
You'll find Parenti.
let's
I
see.
think they even did the Caesar book on Parenti, if I remember.
The face of imperialism. He
Oh
he
right, wait, yeah, I remember that they had Peter on to talk about Lenin's imperialism.
yeah.
I
And last week they had Vosh on about Ayn
really
Rand.
Oh yeah, it's a. Oh, by the way, I posted a thing. I posted a thing where it's just like Ayn Rand, like fascist propaganda. By
Yeah,
Vosh,
yeah,
by
I've
Vosh, the
seen.
Vosh. It was by Vosh, right?
Yeah,
Their
yeah,
guest on. Their gimmick is gonna have like like quote unquote celebrity guest on to to talk for 2 or 3 minutes, I guess, per video. And I mean,
yeah, yeah.
I think this comment put it best under like my meme where I just posted like the thumbnail. I'll quote. In Kumu's explaining how someone who believed that the government should be a night watchman state that is funded only through voluntary transactions is fascist. Which, fair point. I mean, it would probably, it's kind of a utopia and it would probably evolve into fascism anyways, but I mean,
there are
yeah.
so many social fascists on the left. I heard Zia use that phrase, social fascist. I was like, that's good. I'm using that now. That's my thing now.
I mean, it was
I'm
like it
stealing
was
that.
supposed to be like a Stalinist term, but actually they took it from the Italian left and Bordiga. Bordiga pretty much claimed that this was like a term or just an analysis of like stolen from them. Funnily enough,
Well,
But
I
like
love the fuck out of it. I think it's good. I
yeah, I
think
think
that's good shit.
I think it's funny. I think it's funny. I only use it like as kind of like a kind of ironic use of the term because but yeah.
but what strikes me about like radical reviewer is like mainly the books that aren't on there, right? Like for example, like they oh yeah, I see the Peter Coffin thing right now. They have two Lenin reviews of like um, State and Revolution and Imperialism, the High Stage of Capitalism, which are kind of like they're the books that like the online sphere mainly thinks about with Lenin, and they have Ben Burgess's book too, and this makes me think about another thing that there's like these people in this sphere who also write books. They kind of like go on all these shows and like uh, people like Radical Reviewer review and like they go on like Majority Report or whatever, and like then they go talk about their book and like and and that's where the target demographic comes from. It's all from online people, right? Like
I mean, I remember Peter and Angie Speaks went on Michael Brooks's show, if I remember correctly too.
yeah, but like so like the whole following the discourse thing that I mentioned earlier. I mean, I think if like Ben Burgess wouldn't do that, he wouldn't sell any books because like imagine if he went like on a like if he decided to make a book about like some metaphysics stuff or whatever, right? Like he decided to really take a deep dive into epistemology or something. Like nobody would buy that because all these viewers are concerned with topics like cancel culture. Like it's it's so frustrating.
I mean, you're right. When you're right, you're right. That's yeah, that is what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wonder if it's like if these are just like the topics that truly interest them. Like if you could write a book about anything, what would you write a book about? And it's like
Oh wait,
cancel culture,
I just
or is
remembered.
it just
Do
following discourse?
Do you remember those tweets by Peter where he was like, epistemology is just like, it's way too much of a fancy word, we should stop using it? You remember those tweets?
No, no.
Wait, you don't
We
remember
can
them?
try and
Wait,
find
yeah,
something.
no, I do. Oh my god, yeah, I do
Oh
remember.
my god!
Oh
Holy
fuck!
shit, I forgot! I just remembered, like, Elyssa was just talking about epistemology. I was like, wait. Oh my god, I memory hold that.
Uh,
That's so
if people
fucking funny when people who are just stupid as shit will be like, "You used a word I don't know. You're gatekeeping me."
but
Use a
I,
dictionary, motherfucker.
I'm wondering, like, do they propose like that every time we use the word epistemology, we should instead use the study of the nature of knowledge, justification, and the rationality of belief? Because that's like,
Yeah,
I
that's so
mean,
much more confusing to normal people. What the fuck?
I mean, if they said, "Oh, epistemology is just truth or whatever," like, okay, then we replace it with truth. But like,
Yeah, well, it's like the study of, right? But like it's so funny because Peter projects
uh,
some of their own views into that definition because it's like, oh, the irrationality of belief, and it's like, well, epistemology isn't just about studying irrationality. That's
yeah,
not
it's far more broader than it. It's just like all things concerning like knowledge in general. Like, it's yeah. I mean, that's why it's like metaphysics. It's like a like a kind of like outside
yeah.
view of like, knowledge, like
Epistemology
where
and
does knowledge
metaphysics are
come from,
two
when is
different
something true,
philosophy.
like, yeah, it's
But yeah, no,
strange.
it's just if because I actually seem to recall because I was a philosophy minor in college, and I do seem to recall people would be like, "What's epistemology?" And I'd just be like, "Oh, it's how you know things. How does truth work?" And they were like, oh, "All right." It's like, yes, it's wow, look how easy that was. They just go, "Oh, what does that word mean?" And you give them a super easy explanation with like single syllable words, and then they get it, and now they know that word, and now they can use that big word because people aren't like, well, I some people aren't stupid.
Yeah, I mean, I explained it to my parents. Like, my parents are like very um very averse to like this kind of stuff, like politics and philosophy in general. But like, I told them like I have like an interest in philosophy and whatnot, and like, and they asked me what is epistemology, and I just said like, yeah, I mean, it's just like questions about like the nature of truth, like where does truth, what is truth, like how do we know when something is true, like that kind of stuff, and like it's not hard to get, but like because it's not a word everyone knows, they kind of think like, oh, it's like gatekeeping. But
I mean,
like,
to
yeah,
be fair, it
what's
might
the
be
alternative
gatekeeping
name?
for them. Might be gatekeeping for them, which I think says more
Yeah,
about them than anyone else.
Well, it's
yeah,
using complex terminology is not what gatekeeping is, first. Second
Yeah.
of all, suggesting an alternative, even more impenetrable definition that's less accurate than one that a normal person would give, if that is gatekeeping, then you're the one doing it. What the fuck are you talking about, dude?
yeah. I wonder if like they would also say this about like similar terms, like for example, etymology, right? Like the study of like the history of words. Like, would they also say, "Oh, that's just gatekeeping"? Because like, I mean, I think that's a very useful term. And I mean, is it just like philosophy stuff that's like,
Well, more people misunderstand the word postmodern, or more people misunderstand Marx than like fucking etymology or shit like that. Like, does Peter think that using those words is gatekeeping? And why do they use them? What the fuck? That's just such a weird ass thing to say. Peter's Twitter is just a gold mine for just random fucking bullshit.
Spectacle
yeah,
is a
it's
gate is using the word spectacle is gatekeeping, honestly, because I might get it confused with classes.
yeah. I wonder if if I were to say like paleoanthropology or whatever, like would they say like, "Oh, you're gatekeeping"? I wonder where the line here is drawn, because like the like maybe I'm just spitballing, because like
There is no line.
it
It's just fucking bullshit. It's just like, there's Peter is a through tweeter in that sense. Just something like just passes through their brain, and it's like, I'm gonna fucking tweet it out. And for some people, it's just being horny online, like yours truly, and for others, it's being fucking like, yeah.
No, I sympathize because I'm also fucking insane. But
We are all
it's just
insane.
like it's one of these things. Like, so for Peter, I just thought of that fucking Alex Jones clip. Folks, I'm kind of rejected, and I could just imagine like Peter.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna say the word, but you know the word.
I'm reading like the replies to that tweet, and like,
Oh, there was some
let
good
me
ones.
just read.
Oh yeah, there's like a
Let,
good ones or two.
let me just read something. Like, here someone says like all jargon, it speeds communication between those in the know, but erects a major fucking barrier to those without the time to study the dictionary, which is like strange
Study
to me
the dictionary.
because like
I love
you could
studying
find it
the
in
dictionary.
one
I
Google
majored in
search.
dictionaryology.
You could find it
Study
in one Google search, right? Like, and yeah, yeah. I mean, it's, but like what I was gonna say was, I wonder if they would apply the same standard to like, yeah, to less soft sciences, or so to say, right? Like, because like epistemology is philosophy is kind of characterized as like this thing that needs to be made accessible, as, as accessible as much to normal people, and like words like epistemology and postmodernism and post-structuralism and existentialism, they all are like barriers to like to like understanding, and like they meant to alienate a normal person. But like, would they say the same thing about like, yeah, some of the jargon used in like quantum physics, right? Like, the people spent their entire lives studying like these incredibly complex subjects, and like then they use jargon inevitably to communicate like complex concepts that have been developed over like years of yeah, literature, and like that just needs to be made like accessible to normal people by just having not those concepts exist, or like being oversimplified. I don't get it, because like, is it a stab at the soft sciences or in science in general?
it's it's one of those things where like obviously we've touched on like the hypocrisy of it that somebody would use like this much like impenetrable language, and even worse, Peter uses a lot of language that they've coined, or claim to at least. So like it's using esoteric concepts that you invented and trying to use that to communicate to people. You're basically coming up with your own even more impenetrable language. Like that's not better than using a philosophical term. It's kind of ridiculous, and it's one of those things that is just frustrating for me because as I see it, there's a lot of like oversimplification of philosophical concepts. But when you read someone like Marx, the sense that at least I get is not so much that he's like talking out of his ass using complex language just to sound complex. That's not really what's going on there. There's a lot of complex ideas. And it kind of boggles the mind that people who seem opposed to learning about complex ideas would be opposed to the language that it best explains.
Yeah, it's
Well, it's the weird. Hmm, how do I say this? Like, it's trying to tap into a certain like anti-intellectualism without conceding the anti-intellectualism, but rather reframing it through their own supposed intellectualism, if that makes sense. Like, oh, those other intellectuals, they're bad. They're just they talk too much. They don't know what they're like. They're just overly complex and don't know how to say things simply. But me, I've got my shit figured out.
I think it's kind of like do you know like those like fascist narratives about like academia, how it's like
Yeah.
a bunch of bunch of people in ivory towers trying to like really trying to like separate themselves from like normal people actively, right? Like, and like and then like there's this kind of intellectual that positions them as like themselves as like, okay, I'm the person who's going to explain to normal people what this all means, and like I'm also going to say like those other academics, they don't want you to know, right? Like they're like in their ivory towers, they don't care about like you. I'm I'm an intellectual of the people.
I mean, that is kind of the sense of what I'm getting here.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of public intellectuals try to pull that yeah, that kind of trick, because like it's one thing to position yourself as like kind of like a person who tries to present it in a more accessible language, but to then like contrast yourself and like try to like shit on people who don't really do that. Like it's weird to me because yeah, because like it reminds me of, do you know that clip of Chomsky talking about Zizek?
Yeah.
You guys are gonna have to remind me. What does he say?
I mean, he essentially says like that Zizek, what he all talks about is like just nonsense. That it's, I think the best way to characterize it, from how I remember it, was like he calls Zizek like a pseudo intellectual, like
Yeah,
that,
because
because like
for him, like for Chomsky, it's very simple. If you're not an Anglo-empiricist, you're worthless. And I don't mean that as like an exaggeration. I know that he's told like personal, like he straight up told that to Finkelstein. Basically, that's like, okay, you have to follow this certain method, and if you don't do that, then like, oh, like he basically thinks that all social sciences are worthless. Straight up. That's who he is. I mean,
yeah,
it can have
it's
its
fair.
merits. It can have its merits, but that kind of fucking limits you in a lot of ways, to say the least.
Yeah, I think he his like what he said about Zizek, it was very weird because he didn't really engage with anything Zizek has ever written or said or whatever, but it was just like an outright dismissal of even like the notion of considering like Zizekism or however you want to call it. Like, yeah, it's strange to me. I think Chomsky to an extent does that too, like positions himself as like the intellectual that makes things accessible to the people, whereas like you have these people who are dabble in theory and like yeah, it's strange.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to leave that there. But just kind of conclude my thoughts on Coffin. I'm hearing myself. I got like a little echo, I think, from you, Constance.
Oh, really?
Are we good now?
I think.
I'm just going to keep talking and you can tap it down if it keeps happening. But to conclude, I really can't assert in good standing that Peter is plagiarizing Zizek. Um, but I do know that Peter's presentation of this information is not as honest as it could be. And definitely a lot of their politics seem to be heavily driven by grievance as opposed to by intellectual curiosity. And that's
Which
always dangerous.
which I should note is very similar to Destiny.
Yeah.
Yeah,
To a lot of people in certain ways, but like I think Destiny and Coffin are case studies. I would say.
Yeah.
I
Did
mean,
I, by the way, did, did you see that other quote I posted? Like, I know Constance saw it, but like, I'm not sure if Lauren saw it. Like, the one about the cat. I mentioned it earlier today.
oh yeah, the passage where Peter's being cute about the cat. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to read it because, like,
read
I
it.
just want to talk about the style of like Peter's writing a bit, like, and this is just very telling to me. Yeah, like, okay, I'll read it. A cat would probably think about the nature of reality if cats were smart enough, because humans uh, are such big smarties. like those jealous cats wish they were, asking super intense questions about the world around us is inevitable. Cats, however, cannot ask those questions, not just because they aren't smart enough, but because they cannot talk. Well, unless one considers, oh my dog, oh Long John, oh Long Johnson, oh dumb piano, why I Asia, all the livelong day, to be more than nonsense. Further, cats cannot read. They also poop in a box, like as if it's not weird. It's weird. If one asked a cat about postmodernism, that cat would probably look back as if to say, I shit in a box. And I mean, I think this,
Sorry, can I just say bars, poetry?
Yeah,
yeah, I think
unmatched.
this passage, I think this passage is very telling because, like, there's just so much in there where, like, you're wondering, like, okay, why are they telling me this? Like, cats cannot talk, cats cannot read. Okay, thank you, Peter. Like, like, why are they? Yeah, it's so strange. It reads
Well,
like
it's just being cute. I mean, Peter's style of prose reminds
Style.
me a lot, at least in these passages where they're sort of trying to be poetic. Peter's style of prose reminds me quite a lot of like conservative writers. Uh, there are a lot of like conservative public intellectuals like Kevin D. Williamson and people who write the way that Peter writes, and it's once you see it, it's just incredibly funny. I can't not
you
laugh.
know. You know how it reads like to like me, right? Like to me, it reads like as if like Peter got really, really stoned, right? And then they had like this conversation with someone, and this is the transcript. Like to
I
me, it reads like that. It feels like a kind of conversation I could have had if like I was incredibly stoned and like yeah.
talking about like cats shitting and like dude, did you ever think about the fact that like cats can't talk and they shit in a box? And then like postmodernism is gonna tell us that if you talk to them they might like look back at you and just say like and might start talking back. No, that's not true. Every time you're gonna try to talk to a cat, they're just gonna look at you like a fucking idiot. You tell you, and you're gonna get that they can't talk.
And like they shit in a box. Have you ever realized how weird it is that they shit in a box? Imagine if we shit in a box. It's just like if I were high, I would have this conversation. Like
Well, the thing
it's
about it, that
fascinating.
like, I don't even think I would think like this if I was high. Like, I've never once been high and been like, wow, dude, what if like a cat was doing like postmodernism, man? That's crazy. I'm British now for reasons. And like, I don't know. It's just fucking weird to me because like, I, I cannot for the life of me tell you, like, what it would take for me to get into that headspace. But what I can do is I can speculate as to why this passage is in the book. And I think to myself, like, probably what's happening there is Peter was sitting at Peter's desk, and they were like, okay, what do I put in this passage? Because I have to lead into talking about postmodernism. And then they looked down and they were like, oh, look, a cat. All right, I guess that'll work.
Yeah, yeah. That's probably what happened. Uh, do we have any intel on whether Peter has a cat or like?
I think
uh,
Ashley had a cat. I don't know if that was something split in the marriage or something. So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
quite
That seems
possible.
like a very good hypothesis. Like that they just saw a cat and like they thought, oh, that's yeah, that's as good as a way as any to start talking about postmodernism.
Yeah, well, I mean, how else are you going to come up with genius prose like that? I wish I was that good of a writer.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I wish I could write a
Yeah,
book. I don't know. You gotta give
I
it,
mean, you
gotta give it to them. I mean, they finished a whole book. I mean, what you can say about it, it's a book.
Yeah, it's a book. They wrote it. Good
Wow.
job.
I mean, imagine if that was like a ghostwriter. Not even that. Imagine that would be very sad. I don't think so. That has to be Peter.
I
Yeah, no,
mean, I
there's no
think
way. Knowing Peter
I,
and then reading that book, that's 100% Peter.
Yeah.
I, I mean, I think like from what I've read of this book, I think it's very. I mean, it makes me think like, oh, I could definitely write a book that's better than this, right? But like, I'm not writing a book because like I don't think I could write a book that's up to my own standards, right? Like that's why I'm not writing a book because like I don't think because I have higher standards than like being better than Peter Coffin.
It is, you know what though? You can take it like like an inspirational tale, you know? You can do it too if you set your mind to it.
Yeah,
Do you
if
write a
you
You
book?
too
just
Yeah.
can write
draw
a message about why cats don't like postmodernism. You can do that.
Or you can just, make sure you have footnotes, even if they're very loose footnotes. Like, at least you can refer. Okay, I wrote this paragraph because I was riffing on something I read, and like, okay, might not be like one to one, but hey, here you can go look it up. Maybe you'll understand my thought process.
yeah, it's I mean, I guess my perspective on like writing and publishing a book, uh, I mean, it has like a lot more gravity than like an article, for instance, right? Like
Hmm.
so and like if I ever were to write a book, like I would have very high standards for myself. Like I
Hmm.
wouldn't, yeah, I would, and like I'm not convinced I could meet those standards right now or like sometime soon or whatever. So like
The thing
I'm
about
not gonna
writing
write
is
a
it
book, but
helps if you have something to say.
I mean I could easily meet Peter Coffin standards. Like yeah, I think if if I threw out my standards, I could probably write a book that Peter Coffin would be like, oh my God, this is so inspiring.
This is genius.
Yeah,
There's a
if
whole
I
chapter
threw out,
about cats.
yeah,
Be sure to put pictures in it.
Are there? Wait.
yeah.
Big question. Are there pictures in this book?
No, sadly. That would be funny, but
Oh
no.
my god. Imagine if like there was a picture of their cat in the chapter and it's just like the cat shitting in a box.
I think it would be funny to if I can learn to draw a little bit to do like a little drawing of Peter. But akin to that, whoever it was that did that drawing of Sterner, where it's just that little beetle.
Oh
That
my
was Engels,
god.
right? Right now, I'm
I like that
wondering
movie.
because of like the cat passage. I'm wondering if they ever tried to tie that cat passage somehow to like Schrodinger's cat, because like I I mean I don't
It
know.
doesn't come up elsewhere, but that would be funny. Schrodinger's postmodernism.
Yeah, let me see if I can somehow find it.
No, it
um,
doesn't. It doesn't. I wish they would say something. They didn't
Like
say
the
anything.
Chekhov's gun, Chekhov's cat, and just like, yeah, that'd be so dope. They bring the cat up again.
Yeah. I mean, does he shit in a box or like does he not shit in a box? We won't know
Cat should
until
know.
we know.
Well, I think the passage is pretty clear that the cat should. I actually think this is established in the canon of Coffinus. The cat
Yeah,
shits.
yeah.
Cats shit in a box. If nothing else, what we learned during this.
So this is kind of like a debunking of Schrödinger. Like Schrödinger would say, like we won't know until we look in the box whether the cat has shit in the box, and Coffin would say, I mean, there's shit in the box. Come on, he shit
Yeah,
in the box.
I
It's a
mean,
cat.
I
the
would say you're gatekeeping the shit in the box.
no, they acquired this knowledge by using dialectical materialism. Read Stalin.
Yeah, read Stalin.
Yeah, I think we may have like underestimated the depth of this book because in reality it's like uh, a very good debunking of Schrödinger's cat's thought experiment, right?
Wait. Okay, I want to do something. So we know that like Peter just like kind of had like said good things about like Stalin's dialectical and historical materialism. How about I read like at least like a couple of lines so we see just the intro, so we see what we're in store like for somebody to read that and not like be kind of like this is kind of fucking weird and off-putting and culty. All right, so I'm gonna read it. Okay.
Oh, please do.
Okay. Quote, dialectical materialism is the world outlook of the Marxist-Leninist Party. It is called dialectical materialism because its approach to the phenomena of nature, its method of studying and apprehending them, is dialectical under, like in italics. While its interpretation of phenomena of nature, its conception of these phenomena, its theory, is materialistic. Italics again. Historical materialism is the extension of the principles of dialectical materialism to the study of social life, and an application of the principles of dialectical materialism to the phenomena of the life of society, to the study of society and of its history. When describing their dialectical method, Marx and Engels usually refer to Hegel as a philosopher who formulated the main features of the dialectics. This, however, does not mean that dialectics and Marx and Engels so it just like it like go do you get an idea of like how like this text goes? It's basically
That's
just
so fucking funny that Stalin was like, okay, I don't understand this, but I have to explain it.
I mean for people
dialectical materialism is when you have a dialectic, but it's also materialist.
no, but like,
that's what it means.
For people to get it,
it's like great job, man. Thank you.
No, for people to
great
get
philosophy.
For people to get it, like they're like known like Stalin's like teacher on Hegel would get fucking like would be very cheery after before going into like a study session with Stalin, and I would like come out of there and be fucking gloom about it. And like Stalin just didn't fucking get it at all. Did not get Hegel. Did not get fucking dialectics. It was like driving the teacher mad. I think the teacher got shot at some point. So yeah.
I love this.
I mean like yeah. Oof.
I love this.
Wait,
that's
I
fucking
think,
funny.
I think
Mayo.
Posted,
yeah, Mayo. Can you find it? That would be so fucking funny if we could read like the actual thing.
I can try to find it.
So we understand. So like this is like the guy that Peter read on like dialectics.
This makes me want to blow my fucking brains out. Holy shit. What a great teacher.
I can read more. So, like, one of the sections, one, Marx's dialectical method. The principal features of the Marxist dialectical method are as follows. A. Nature connected and determined. Contrary to metaphysics, dialectics does not regard nature as an accidental agglomeration of things, a phenomena unconnected with, isolated from, and independent of each other, but as a connected integral whole which things, phenomena, are organically connected with, dependent on, and determined by each other. The dialectical method therefore holds that no phenomena in nature can be understood if taken by itself, isolated from surrounding phenomena, inasmuch as any phenomena in any realm of nature may become meaningless to us if it is not considered in connection with the surrounding conditions, but divorced from them, and that vice versa, any phenomena can be understood and explained if considered in its inseparable connection with surrounding phenomena, as one conditioned by surrounding phenomena. And again, B. Nature is a state of continuous motion and change. Contrary to metaphysics, dialectic holds that nature is not a state of rest. Like it goes on, like it's just this. Again, section C. Contrary to metaphysics, like it's just this. Like again, section D. Contrary to metaphysics, like and it's just this. It's just this. Like it's just repeating the stuff.
Constance.
Yeah.
Man, the physics understander has logged on. That's crazy.
Just to show just how much Peter's understanding of dialectics is influenced by Stalin. Like here, the little thread of 3 tweets. I'll read it out because I have it here. Contrary to metaphysics, Peter starts off, right?
Oh no!
With the phrase, contrary to metaphysics, dialectics holds that internal contradictions are inherent in all things and phenomena of nature, for they all have their negative and positive sides, a past and a future, something dying away and something developing. That the struggle between these opposites, The struggle between the old and the new, between that which is dying away and that which is being born, between that which is disappearing and which is developing, constitutes the internal content of the process of development, the internal content of the transformation of quantitative changes into qualitative changes. Then someone like post dialectical and historical material.
Wait. Did Peter post that without quotation marks? Because he is citing Stalin right there. He is Stalin.
Yeah.
Section D, contradiction inherent in nature. It's literally what
It's without quotation marks, and then
someone
links the Stalin book. Then someone links the Stalin book in the comments, and then they reply, "Very good."
So and, Peter unironically cited Stalin without quotation marks. Did anyone just point out that was just citing Stalin? It is I can read it. Section D, contradictions inherent in nature. Contrary to metaphysics, dialectics holds that internal contradictions are inherent. Everything that you just said is in Stalin.
Yeah, here's the education thing Mayo posted, right? Stalin, as we know, received no systemic education. He struggled to understand philosophical questions without success. And then in 1925, he called in Jan Steen, one of the leading Marxist philosophers of that time, to direct his study of Hegelian dialectics. Steen drew up a program of study for Stalin and conscientiously, twice a week, dinned Hegelian wisdom into his illustrious pupil. Often he told me in confidence about these lessons, about the difficulties he, as a teacher, was having because of his students' inability to master the material of Hegelian dialectics. Jan often dropped in to see me after a lesson with Stalin in a depressed and gloomy state, and despite his natural cheerful disposition, he found it difficult to regain his equilibrium. That's the thing you were talking about earlier with Stalin's teacher for Hegelian dialectics.
So yeah, we do have to keep in mind this is the source of what I can imagine that this gets referenced as 101 material for baby leftists. They're just go read this. I mean, it's
there
Stalin.
Are Marxist-Leninist YouTubers. Who's that one fucking guy in the Marxist-Leninist who dresses like Mr. Dapperton, the guy who's got the mask on with the goggles and the, you know who I'm talking about? He talks in an unusually deep voice.
Is that Bay Area ML?
Maybe, yeah, maybe that's the fucking guy, because I remember that he got clipped on
dialectics
is dialectics, where he said basically the same thing.
Yeah, dialectics is when you argue, you find the truth of things by arguing different sides, something like that.
So the Wright brothers, just being a contrarian, that's dialectics.
Wait,
okay,
I'll post this image. I'll post this image in chat. Here, is this the guy?
Bear is so fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, I think that's the guy. Oh, yeah. Is that a fucking wrist map?
He's a corporate lawyer too, right? I made a tweet about it the other day. How I think it's very funny that if you say hey, do you know that corporate lawyer Marxist-Leninist on Twitter, that it's a valid response to say which one.
because
oh my fucking god, dude.
Isha from the Historically podcast is also a corporate lawyer, a corporate IP lawyer too, and was chiding people for getting books for free online, literally the scum of the earth,
My fucking god,
scum
dude.
of the earth.
Listen.
For the worst thing, it was about a fucking book that was an old book, that you wouldn't be able to get very easily at all, right? And you're chiding at
I cannot tell
for that?
Not tell which of these images I want to use for this image thumbnail. Do I want the Peter and the fucking
the Joker?
Yeah. What is that? What is that even called?
I don't know.
It's one of those public humiliation instruments, one of those medieval instruments where you put your head through it. What are those called?
I have no idea.
Shit,
I'm not.
Oh wait! Yeah, that one.
I want to use that, or I'm gonna use this Bay Area ML image. Actually, it's too fucking good.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people use that image on Twitter, and then they use the caption of like, "This is my liar. Fuck, I'm going to jail."
All right, guys, we got to wrap this up.
Yeah.
Final thoughts.
Well,
Yeah.
look, I plead the fifth on certain things.
I mean,
But
I
okay.
don't like I've disliked. I think there's like a trifecta of like RedTube personality that I've disliked for a long time now, and Peter Coffin non-compete. I've talked about.
We'll have to do a
non-compete
non-compete episode. We're gonna have to.
Yeah,
We're gonna have to actually do one.
Oh no.
and like
I'm sorry, everybody.
No,
they
that's actually
just
very
keep-
good. I want
they
to do a study of non-compete. It's a fascinating
and
character.
and I just want to keep like being proven wrong about them, right? I just want to be charitable.
I know. I
want them
was
to
like that
prove me wrong.
before. I was exactly like that
But
before.
like
No, I know what you
But-
guys mean, Sam.
they keep disappointing me, and it's at some point it has become funny to me because like they're honestly characters. That's,
They are.
They're characters online, but like yeah, let's just say that it doesn't get that much better when they log off.
yeah.
So true. All
That's
right.
my final thought.
This has been the Kelsey. Do you have any remarks before we
wait,
go?
we have Kelsey.
Not particularly. I had
Oh
to
my
leave
God.
halfway through because I had food to
Kelsey's
eat.
just been sitting there bemused this entire time.
Oh my God.
Well, I did actually leave for like 30 or 40 minutes because I had to eat, and then it was like, I don't know how to insert myself back into any of these conversations, so I'm gonna just sit here.
It's okay.
Yeah, you
Okay.
said you were gonna leave for 10 minutes, and then
Yeah, my mother needed a hand
It's
with
gone for
something.
half the episode. It's fine. This is a professional podcast.
I
Yeah,
barely
All right,
fit in.
professional.
everybody.
I,
This
I
is the
will leave
low-hanging
one
fruit
final
signing
remark.
off.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
goodbye.
bye.